Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining tonight's Culture Meets Money. Just waiting for our guest to join, and we will get started. During our conversation, if you guys have any questions, just drop them. Definitely get them answered.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Hi. It should be wine. It's like one of those conversations where instead of water, you have the wine. Oh, look at that. See? Ahead of the game. So, this is already been a great conversation. I'm already ready now. Ready.
Listen, this is date night time.
Yeah.
So
Julian trying to convince me this is a date instead of work.
Oh,
I
see,
said,
you know what? I like that. I like the guy on the meme. I like that.
yeah.
It's not working though. It ain't working.
It ain't
Try it,
working. I
fellas.
like it.
Online webinars are the new dates, fellas.
This is COVID too. This is like the new COVID norm.
Yes.
Yeah. We don't get to go out that often, so honestly, whenever we get, and we don't go live pretty much ever. So when we do get a chance to talk to people, it's like, oh wow, there's
Let me put on a good shirt.
oh yeah.
We are honored. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Thank you. So everyone, this is Culture Meets Money. I want to thank you both. I really am honored that you guys have decided to join us for this week's Culture Meets Money. And I never like to do disservice to the amazing guests that we have, so I'm going to shut up and allow you to introduce yourself.
I love it.
No, you go.
Sure. So I'm Julian Saunders. This is Kirsten, my wife. We are entrepreneurs, former real estate investors, now digital entrepreneurs, if you will. We run the blog at richandregular.com, and we're building a few other sort of foundational online businesses now. We are budding authors, so we have a book coming out next year. Fingers crossed this time next year, and a bunch of other stuff. But basically, we love to talk about money, make money, save money, and try to inspire as many other people to do the same.
Nice. Well, you guys are actually our very first couple
Oh.
on Culture Meets Money. So I'm even more excited now because I've never got a chance to, and I'm not married, by the way, so I get to learn through. I'm preparing myself.
Yeah.
Don't rush.
when the time comes. So as our very first couple and getting into all the things that I've read about, the wonderful things that you guys talk about and that you do. The first question I want to ask and jump into is coming into the relationship, especially to marriage. When do you guys have that first conversation about your personal finances with each other?
So for those that already follow us, you probably have heard this story, but our first money conversation was really a confrontation, and ended in a fight, which led to us breaking up. It was after a vacation that we had taken. So we started dating and it was hot and heavy pretty quickly. And so we went on this trip like within the first 2 or 3 months, which, whatever, don't judge. We went on this trip like really soon, and we had split the cost of the trip, and I put my portion on my credit card. And so when we got back from the trip, I was ready to jump back into like honeymoon phase, whining and dining, out several times a week like we were doing before. And Julian was ready to pay for the vacation. And so he was like ready to buckle down and like, scrimp and figure out how he was going to pay off this vacation that we just went on. And so when we started talking about it, he was like, how are you not like paying, like, how are you planning to pay for this? Like, because we were making the same amount of money. And I was like, I just put it on a credit card. What are you talking about? I have no plan to pay for it. Like, that's what credit cards are for. And he said that if he had known that I had this credit card debt and like the spending problem, then he would have never dated me. And so that was our very first money talk. It did not end well. We ended up breaking up. And Eventually he came back around because they always do. And we worked it out. But it was not the way that I would advise most people to talk about money.
This is normally when I chime in and provide like some context.
Well, I like the fact during your whole story, his facial expression never changed. It was like, he was like, I've heard this a million times. I'm going to let her finish, and then I'm going to tell the true story.
Listen, what she said was directionally true. I said what I said, but I will say now that obviously that was a terrible thing to say, but I am grateful because it forced us to have a conversation about money really early on in our relationship. And I think what we learned over time is how normal it is for people to avoid it altogether. You wait until maybe even until like you have even after marriage, you wait until you're getting ready to buy a house or something like that, or have a kid, to really saying, all right, well, now that we have to disclose these sorts of things about ourselves. And that's when you really start to learn about your partner's history with money. And so the benefit for us was that we learned about it, to her point, really, really early on. And our money story, was really sort of part of our entire relationship story. So yeah, I obviously happily ever after. I don't recommend confronting or using that kind of, forceful language or tone. But I learned a lot about myself. We learned a lot about each other in the process.
Yeah.
So because it seems like you two are totally on two totally different pages when it came to how you were going to pay off this, vacation, does it go back to how each of you were raised when it comes to thinking about money? And can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
With your relationship, when you're in a relationship with someone who is brought up totally different with you when it comes to money.
Yes, it definitely went back. Some of it went back to how we were raised. Some of it was just gender roles and socialization, which is a whole other category of mindset issues. But a lot of it was because I was raised to believe that money was a tool that you use to build relationships. My parents always took us on vacations. We were always that house in the neighborhood that like hosted all the friends and like had the parties. And so for me, like, it was normal to spend money to do things and to create memories with people that you love. And for Julian, it was more like, this is a sign of recklessness and irresponsibility, as opposed to where my heart was I was just trying to make memories.
Yeah. And to her point, like, there's nothing wrong with that, right? We've come to learn, well, obviously I shouldn't say there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not as simple as saying, oh, those of us who consider themselves, let's say, natural spenders are like the natural villain in the story, and those of us who are natural savers are the heroes. It's way more complex than that, because there's a time and a place to spend money. You want to have a happy relationship and build memories or even help people, you do need to be a little bit more comfortable spending money. And so she had to learn how to save for me, and I actually had to learn how to spend, from her, because I was so accustomed to not having enough and really being financially insecure, and always being fearful of like how to get over the next sort of hump. And she sort of helped me to build my confidence and focus on income and other things. So together we've been a pretty good team.
Wonderful. So you spoke on it earlier with the first question, but when do you recommend that couples actually have that talk about money?
So we're team as early as possible. However, there's like levels to it. So I think a lot of people, especially if you were socialized as a woman or grew up in like really religious backgrounds, there's this taboo around money. And so conversations tend to be very serious. And it is like very like almost like an interrogation, instead of like actually being curious about somebody and their background and being more playful with it. And so if you're early in your relationship, you need to practice playful ways to bring up money. And so it can be as simple as joking about the bill when it comes, like, oh, it must be very expensive for you to take all these girls on dates every week. or commenting on that belt that he always wears, like, okay, you wearing your designer belt today. Just little ways that you can think about. That wasn't a good example. But people wear that belt every single time. Anyway.
The good belt?
That good belt.
That good belt.
That good date belt.
Okay.
you know, just joke, find ways to like find the humor in financial situations of the month. And there's like bills coming. There's just lots of ways that you can gauge somebody's reaction, because it's one of those conversations that for a lot of people, it carries a lot of weight and trauma. And so you kind of need consent before you can have like a really productive conversation. And the good news about laughter is it doesn't really require like a whole lot of consent. If somebody laughs, you know, it's safe to keep like going there with them. And you can maybe push it a little further. And, you know, as your relationship grows and as you get to know each other more, you can start having deeper conversations. I'm not saying like ask for their credit score on date one, but you kind of ease your way into that so that by the time, to Julian's point, you have higher stakes decisions to make, whether that's vacation or moving in together or getting married or having a child. You kind of have a good foundational understanding of their behavior, both the past behavior and kind of their current behavior.
Yeah, I, you know, my brother is married. I said I'm preparing myself, and I always joke with him and his wife, because I feel like they've been married now for 2 years, but I mean they've been dating since high school, and I feel like they're still learning each other. And I was like, did y'all not ever sit down and be like, look, this is my student loans, like this is my. So it's crazy that I do know people who I feel like they waited till after marriage to have that conversation. And I might be wrong, but I think isn't like money like the number 2 reason that people get divorced? Number one reason. So with that, I'm really curious of how your beginning story, which is really interesting, and I'm going to forever remember that because that is so funny. To where you are now, you're actually kind of teaching couples. So how do I go from there to what you do now, which is people look at you two as a couple to really learn about money?
I don't even know that we really thought about it that way, but I will say actually a lot of what we did came from a place of frustration. And so it was like, you know, you talk to people and they would complain about the same things over and over and over again, but never really do anything about it. And what we started to realize is that a lot of the problems that people were having were actually financial problems, but because culturally it's so taboo to talk about money that it was sort of coded differently. And so they would talk and let's say complain about their job, but what they were really complaining about is the fact that they don't make enough money, or they would complain about their husband or their wife or their partner or whatever. And then they would realize, but what they were really complaining about is the fact that like there's not enough money for everybody to do what they want to do the way that they want to do it. And so for us, it was like, you know, really just being passionate about our community and wanting to see positive change, and honestly, being willing to deal with some conflict along the way, because we knew that we dealt with each other at our worst. So it was like, all right, we could take it on, you know what I mean? And we also knew that we had the ability to smooth it out and make people laugh along the way. So really it was about trying to create change and create a different way for people to feel a little bit more comfortable talking about money in every aspect of their life.
Nice. A question that I feel like we get a lot at Capway, even though we're not couple experts, but we do financial content, is your thoughts on why or why not you should actually share an account with your spouse. So what do you guys think about that, and how does it work for you?
We're at the point now where we share an account. We even share a credit card where one of us is the primary and the other one's an authorized user, just because it makes it easier to see and to manage money, and it prevents having awkward conversations after the fact. You can kind of track it in real time, and if somebody goes and, you know, buys something expensive, you can kind of address it right there and adjust for the rest of the month instead of waiting.
Somebody.
The spender.
Hypothetically, if someone were to need a new skincare routine, then, you know, you can address how much that costs and adjust the budget accordingly. But I understand why some couples keep it completely separate. We did that for a while, but then we were paying fees on like 4 different accounts. And every time we would try to consolidate it, like the money apps haven't really evolved quite enough to consolidate all of the couple's expenses into one bucket. And so it was 2 different logins. And we're
just want to say really quickly, you know,
plug yourself.
Well, I'm like, even for you all, I mean, like I say, ideas come, they, you know, usually they grow. You can add it to the empire that you guys have already built.
It's true.
Throw that out there.
It's true. If we have any technical people on the call, send us a DM
Right.
about how we create a consolidated couple app.
Right.
But like, yeah, it's just we're generally pretty lazy and passive when it comes to like the big picture of finances, and it was just too much to handle. But I totally understand why some people would keep it separate, and I think it's just a personal choice.
Nice. You guys have a series called Money on the Table. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, it's really just an excuse to be able to write off eating good. No, I think it goes back to what we were saying before. You know, we are, you know, she has in her prior career a lot of time in business development and sales. I had a lot of time in marketing. And now as entrepreneurs, we're obviously leveraging a lot of our skills that we learned in the corporate workforce or when we were corporate employees. And what this was about is really like a creative challenge. Like when I think about the challenges that people have with personal finance, or actually I wouldn't even say it that way. When I think about the world of personal finance and I think about it being this big, and I think about the number of people that actually need the information that's being fed to this people or this small group of people, it's this big, right? And so we had to figure out other ways to lure people into these messages because the people, like very few people, this many people, wake up every day and have no problems talking about money, thinking about money, conversing with their partners and navigating all of that. But everybody else in the world is not like that. And so we know we just needed to figure out just more entertaining ways to pull people in. And so it just made sense for us to leverage something that we enjoy, something that I do well as a former professional chef in another life, and to try to blend the two together. And so we came up with Money on the Table, which is part cooking show, part financial talk show, part whatever the conversation is going to be that day. It's about being insightful and not necessarily educational, because that's the other thing that we've learned is that very few people wake up wanting to learn about money today. You know what I mean? They want to wake up and be entertained. It's very much a part of American culture. We want to be entertained. We want to laugh. We want things to be visually interesting. And we want a couple nuggets along the way. And so that was something that we were really interested in. And so we pulled it together over the summer.
So another part of the empire that you two are building is you mentioned earlier the book.
Yes.
Would you mind kind of talking about the book that, as you say, hopefully will come out this time next year?
We're still writing it, so it's like a tender subject. But our goal for the book is to follow the same path of Money on the Table, where, you know, a lot of personal finance books are packed full of stats and outcomes, but they don't really talk about the process and what you encounter along the way. And so what our book is hoping to reveal, specifically for a Black or a person of color audience, a black person or a person of color.
It's going downhill.
It's this wine. I've only had 3 sips.
It's going downhill fast.
Yeah. We really just wanted to talk about the process of pursuing financial independence, all the things that we've had to encounter along the way and take a holistic approach. And so a lot of our book is about, you know, the challenges that you'll encounter on the way there and the mindset shifts that you have to have in order to do the things that you need to do, you know, to get to the next level. And so, yeah, we're still like in the middle of writing it. I think we're almost halfway done.
Almost halfway done.
So,
and it's been a really interesting journey. Just writing, because very similar to learning about money, as we go back and think about some of our experiences in work, or go back and think about our childhood, it's almost, you know, you're revisiting trauma in a lot of ways, you know, things that start to shape your financial mindset. And to Kirsten's point, what we're writing about is, this is not a how-to book, right? There are plenty of how-to. If it were as simple as how-to, then everyone else would, you know, have figured this out, right? Yeah. Because they just needed to know how to do it.
Right.
It's not that simple. Right? Like, you can tell someone how to do it, they still have to figure out how to do it. They encounter tons, especially Black people, emotional hurdles along the way. We're dealing with several in our personal life now outside of our marriage. And so that's a very real thing. And those are the things that we're talking about, because going back to the conversations that we've had and continue to have with a lot of couples, those are the things that get in the way. The issue is not that they don't earn enough money, or they don't know what to do, or they don't know the difference between a Roth and a traditional IRA. The difference is they don't know, what to do with this next dollar. Do I give it to my son and invest in his future? Do I spend it today because my relationship is on the rocks? Or do I give it to my mother because she's dead broke and she was part of the middle class of people who lost pretty much all their wealth in the 2008 recession, and I owe a debt to her? You know what I mean? That's
Which
a
was
real.
actually my next question. We're going to get into that. Go ahead.
Yeah, but my point is, we're talking about money from that standpoint, a very real life standpoint, and we're speaking to a very specific group of people. Not everyone's going to relate to the book, and that's perfectly fine, because our job is to cater to people who really haven't been spoken to, in our opinion, in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a couple, but I'm going to check out the book.
Yeah.
You actually kind of spoke on it though, but I want to kind of jump into really quickly, dealing with black tax, but as a couple. So black tax was something that the term was coined in Africa, but it goes back to pretty much, especially for minorities, specifically black and brown, how when we get money, usually it's like millennials or the children, we're usually, instead of building wealth for ourselves or our children, we're still having to pay for, like, have our parents out, or we're having out our brother or our uncle. And that's something that, once again, that's part of the black tax. How do you deal with that as a couple? I mean, I don't know if like personal, it's the couple you guys have talked to or people that you've encountered along the way. Like, what advice do you give to maybe if it's one person versus the other who's having to deal with, dealing with black tax?
That's a very, very real question.
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you, our marriage isn't perfect, right? And I'm not trying to be a downer here, right? Our marriage is in a great state. But if I had to say that there was one thing that is a bit of a rub, it's that, right? It's the fact that we're dealing with a financially insecure parent on one side, my side, if we're being transparent. And that, without question, has an impact on the way that we manage our money. I think the advice that I would give to people is to make talking about money so normal, right? We talk about money on a regular basis. Just as annoyed as you are asking what do you want for dinner tonight, babe, you need to be talking about money, because it impacts arguably every single aspect of your life. And so if you are struggling with processing the decision on top of just trying to navigate the conversation, you're making it way worse, right? You got to take some of the things off the table. And so the fact that we can talk about money comfortably and freely gives us the capacity, the emotional capacity and the mental capacity to just focus on the problem itself. You know what I mean? What's the problem? The problem is she needs to come up with, let's say, $400 to $500. Okay, if we needed to solve that, how do we do that? You know what I mean? We're not trying to tackle that, but I also need to do my hair care. But you know what I mean? Like, and I didn't know about that or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like, talk about money to the point where it is natural, it's muscle memory, it's respectful, you understand your boundaries, you're flowing. We call it dancing, and we're writing about that in the book. It's like, to a point, when you see a couple and they've been together for a long time and they're dancing, that's really what you want to happen when you're talking about money. In that way, when somebody does stumble or there is an issue, the other person can adjust and rebound, and you guys, and maybe nobody else would even notice. You play it off real cool, like. Yeah. And so that's really at the heart of what we're trying to accomplish with the book. But to your point, at the heart of the advice that we give to couples who are struggling with those things. There's no single rule of thumb, because everybody's family is different.
All right. So I'm going to ask one more question. Then we do have some questions that came in from the audience.
Okay.
What advice do you give to young couples? My grandmother said, these you young people, y'all are so different. So of course, I guess the way that millennials and Gen Z handles relationships and money is way different from more than likely clearly how probably our grandparents did it. What advice do you give to that young couple who's 23, 24, 25 preparing for marriage?
Mm. Well, if they are preparing for marriage, then it would be figure out how to live off of one income as much as possible. And if not fully one income, then one and a half. Like live significantly below your means. That was one of our secrets to success, I guess if you could call it, is when we moved in together after we got engaged. We were living off of one income. We didn't succumb to lifestyle inflation, and we figured out what things we could combine or do away with to keep our expenses very, very low. And then we invested almost everything else after we were done paying down debt. Well, for a while we did both, but either way, if you can keep your expenses very, very low and keep your lifestyle very, very lean and simple, then you set yourself up for when additions come or when challenges come, whether it's having a baby or needing to take care of a family member, you already have the cushion that you need without disrupting the things that you've already gotten accustomed to.
All right. So let's take a few questions. All right. First question is, we often hear money is the biggest reason for divorce. What do y'all feel is the biggest factor in finances that lead to the divorce?
I mean, the thing that we hear from people is this idea of not being able to get on the same page, where they've already decided in their mind that one person is the saver, one person's a spender, one person's responsible, one person's irresponsible. And it's just like you've locked someone into this fixed identity. And no matter what you do or what they do, there's no escaping it. And so you've already kind of projected this tension out into the future and you can't see past it. And we actually argue against the concept of being on the same page because it makes it seem like it's like this static place that you go and you just sit. It's like getting a driver's license. Once you take the license test, you don't ever have to take it again. But really, the act of like being emotionally attuned and in line with your partner is something that is ongoing and consistent. It's like water. It's like an ocean wave. Like it's just there. It's something you have to work at every single day. And that's part of the reason that we chose to pursue financial independence as a lifestyle, because with work and the work that family relationships require, there just wasn't enough time to do both. And so our question was really around which work did we want to do? And for us, it made way more sense to get rid of the work that was making corporations richer and focus on the work that could build generational wealth, which is making sure that we have a stable household and can raise our son in a loving environment. And so I think it's just this idea that financial alignment is like a one and done thing. And it's not. It's something that, to Julian's point, you have to practice and work at and consistently do, just like you have to think about what we're going to eat tonight.
Who is the person who never knows what they want to eat?
Me.
But
he asked me.
I was trying to give you an out. I thought it was going to be like,
because I could eat the same thing like 3-4 nights a week. And he is the one that actually has a stronger preference about what we're going to eat. So when he asked me, it's like, why are you asking me when you know what you already want?
I like his facial expression, just like,
I know what I don't want.
Going to say this.
Which makes it worse. She knows what she doesn't want.
All right, so I think this person just probably came in a little bit later. You kind of spoke to it very early, but if you know, I guess if not, if you answer it, but you can kind of give people where they can find the information. The question was, what's the projected release date of your book?
Yeah, so we don't control that, and we're learning in the process. We're first-time authors with a major publisher. We don't really control that, and so what we are committed to doing is to meeting our deadline, which is to ensure that we get our editor the final manuscript by the end of the year. And you really don't ever know when the projected release date is going to be, but right now it's slated for around late Q3 2021.
Yeah. Hopefully before Barack Obama's book comes out. So y'all,
same day.
So y'all had time to read ours first before you jump into that 700-pager.
Well, let us know. You'll definitely post it, on Capway.
Thank you.
To support. All right, so we're going to end it with, we always ask our guests to leave us with a hack. And in this case, we would love if you could give us a hack when it comes to couples.
Ooh.
So any form of money hack is up to you two. It's all on you. I'm going to shut up. Give us a hack.
This might seem like I'm cheating, but I do think a hack to saving money for sure is learning how to cook. Because I think, I shouldn't say think, I believe, first of all, we know that money is one of the biggest expense, or food is one of the biggest expenses that most people have. Um, and I think one of the biggest reasons why people don't cook more is because they don't like what they're cooking. You know what I mean? It's like they know it saves them money.
It's not speaking for anybody in particular.
Yeah, in general. So I think one of the biggest investments we can make is learning how to cook better, understanding, you know, how to, because when you do that, you've got a wider variety of things that you can make, and it doesn't feel like deprivation. You know what I mean? You can have a great date night at home and you don't feel like you're depriving yourself. If you had to, when things got really dicey, you could live off of rice and beans and then not feel like you're, you know,
opening cans.
Right. You can actually make it taste delicious and enjoy it. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things. And especially if you can do that as a couple. We're not there yet.
I make a great drink.
We're not there yet. So we feel other couples who may struggle with that misalignment. But we're working.
I have other skills.
She said that she is wonderful at takeout. Like, she can order like nobody else.
He makes food, I make it happen.
That's right. I make food and she makes food happen. You know, Uber Eats is in the budget.
Look, I will admit that I make really great, like, you know, whatever you can like put on the stove and it like happens really quickly.
Listen.
That's my thing. So I will say that my cousin convinced me to try HelloFresh. She's like, all the ingredients come with it and the instructions come with it. It's like you cannot go wrong. So yeah, you know, I do really great takeout too, so I do understand.
Yeah.
Like, I'm an expert at taking out. Ordering, Uber Eats, DoorDash, like I'm an expert.
Between that and a snack dinner, listen. Yeah, the first time he came over to my apartment when we were dating, I made a snack dinner, and he was like, "I don't understand."
I didn't know what that was. It was just all the snacks.
I was like, it's like a charcuterie, but with snacks.
A little bit of dip, a little bit of chips, a little bit of
all dry goods.
All right, so once again, we are honored. Thank you so much for your time. Please let everyone know how they can follow you, how they can find you, how they can get involved with you.
Yes, so we're at richandregular.com. That's our blog. And then all of our social media handles, from Twitter to Facebook to Instagram, is all Rich and Regular. And then if you're interested in watching Money on the Table, we're on YouTube at Rich and Regular.
All right. Well, for everyone who joined us for this week's Culture Meets Money, thank you for checking us out. And once again, to our guests, we're honored. This was hilarious, but it was also very, very informative. So once again, thank you for your time. And until we meet again, you guys have a great one.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.